What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It is finally time for us to dive into the second game of the Final Four. We've got the Duke Blue Devils taking on the Houston Cougars. 8:49 tip-off time. Man, we're not going to waste any time because I could be more excited to jump into this game here. Man, smash that like button for me if you can, guys, and hit subscribe if you have not already. I'd greatly appreciate it. Now let's jump right into the mix, man. Duke opened up as 4.5-point favorites. They're now sitting at 5.5 points. We have seen some money come in on Duke really since this line opened, man, on the money line and the spread. The money has definitely favored the Duke side. And the total is also moving now. Opened up at 136.5, and we see that down to 135.5. Now, like I said, this is the second game of the Final Four, and it's going to pit what's been the two highest ranked teams throughout this season up against each other. And we've talked about it briefly in that Florida and Auburn video, man, about how a lot has been made of all these number one seeds, right? All number one seeds making it to the Final Four. A lot of people upset about the chalkiness. No upsets really. No mid-major runs. I get it. I do. Guys, we got to remember, man, we are about to watch some elite basketball. Like, these are the four highest ranked teams for a reason, man. Historically, this is four of the best college basketball teams that we have seen in quite some time. And then these two right here, well, they sit at the cream of the crop, man. These are the top two teams in the nation, even better than those other two in the top four. So we can look at the Ken Palms or the Bart Torvik, right? The efficiency rankings. And both of these teams are ranked first and second. Now, depending on which one you're looking at, is going to show you which team is ranked first overall, right? Duke sitting at first in the Ken Palms, Houston sitting at first in the Bart Torvik for the efficiency rankings. Both of these teams are top five defensively in the rankings, and Houston is taking first in defensively in both rankings, Duke taking first offensively. And with the Final Four being played in San Antonio, I do think that we have to at least consider the fact that Houston is about a 3.5 hour drive from San Antonio. There's probably some Houston fans in San Antonio to begin with. So we could see a crowd that favors the Houston side slightly more than Duke because we know that Duke faithful travels, man. We know that we're going to see some Blue Devil fans in that stadium for sure. So while I think that Houston will have a slight edge with the crowd, don't know that it's a big enough factor to play into this game, but I did think that it was still worth noting. These two have met only once prior to this meeting here, and that was last season in the tournament in the Sweet 16. Duke withstood a Houston team that played them tough and played them physical, much like they'll face again here, as Houston is pretty much running the same team back, right? The only starter from that team that didn't return to the Cougars this season is Jamal Shed, who was drafted by the NBA's Raptors, but they've replaced his production pretty nicely with the addition of Milo Suzanne. The Blue Devils took that Sweet 16 matchup by 3 in a low-scoring 54-51 contest. And while, Houston does look and play much of the same as we saw last year, this version of Duke is significantly better than that 2024 version. Hey, you got Freshman's Flag and Knipple. That's their two top leading scorers. Both start, obviously, along with another freshman, their center, Malawach. Look, there's a lot of new faces over here for the Blue Devils, but it's a lot of new faces that have given them a ton of production. And then you still have Tyrese Proctor over there. He remains on the squad from last year's team, and he's had another impressive season, man, shooting 45% from the field overall, 52% from two, and 41% from deep. So, I mean, Duke has a ton, and I mean a ton of firepower, and they can beat you so many ways. Everything they do offensively, it looks, calculated, well thought out. Looks like they're running an NBA offense half the time when they're out there playing, man. And that's telling of how great this coaching staff has been, considering the three starting freshmen on this team, right? And Duke also brings a pretty big size and length advantage into this one. Their shortest starter, 6'5". So let's jump over here to Outlier. Let's look at these team stats real quick. Let's look at both of the offenses going up against each other. We can see Duke offensively has definitely put up some better numbers on the year. They sit at sixth overall for effective field goal percentage compared to Houston at 107. They're 12th in points per game. Houston sitting at 167th in that same regard. Duke 16th in terms of 2-point shooting percentage, ninth in terms of shooting from deep. And then we look at Houston, and while they do rank fourth in terms of 3-point shooting, they are all the way down at 283rd in terms of 2-point shooting for percentage and 111th overall in terms of field goal percentage. I mean, honestly, this makes sense, right? We talked about that height advantage for Duke. No guys starting coming in under 6'5" for the Blue Devils, right? Well, Houston rolls out a starting five with no one standing taller than 6'7". They kind of feast on the perimeter, and it's an offense that relies heavily on their guard play. And they have the guys to do it, man. Cryer, Sharp, Uzan, they're all more than capable of creating their own looks. And then Arsenault, he can do the same off the bench for the Cougars as well. He can create his own looks also. Now, Duke on the season, though, has been pretty damn stout defensively, man. They can lock up on the perimeter. They rank 32nd in terms of 3-point shooting percentage allowed to the opposition. I think Houston will really struggle getting in the paint and making anything happen in that regard as well. Duke, with all that size and length, man, they're going to make it difficult to begin with, but then they have held opponents to just 38% shooting overall. That's good for fourth in the nation. They are second in both 2-point shooting percentage allowed and opponents' effective field goal percentage as well. Now, they sit at 10th for defensive rebounds. They're 16th for opponents' offensive rebound rate. And while Houston hasn't struggled in that regard, like in a major way, they sit at only 44th overall in the nation for offensive rebounds. And they have just struggled overall on the glass this year as their opponents sit at 24th overall for total rebounds per game. Houston is just 105th. And while Duke themselves offensively don't have quite the same amount of playmaking guards that Houston has, they do boast two players in Proctor and then in Flag. Both are more than capable of finding their own looks as well, and they bring a more balanced offensive attack to the court in general, the Blue Devils do. So I definitely give them the edge offensively. Now, defensively is where things get trickier because we talked about Duke, man. They've got a great defense. But the trickiness of the defensive side of things is it plays a huge factor in why I feel like this game is going to be the hardest game to call sidewise in this tournament. Um, and that includes whoever ends up going into the national championship. Because spoiler alert, man, I feel like whoever wins this one, they take the whole thing, right? So I think this is going to be the hardest game to call as far as the side goes. It's funny because everywhere you look, man, everyone is talking about Duke, 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 Duke. And I'll admit, man, I'm leaning that way as well. But no way in hell would I lay points with Duke right now, especially not when it's up to 5.5. Absolutely not, man. Money line or nothing for me. I would probably parlay it with the total, right? We'll get into that later, though. Look, it's simple to me. Houston's defense is one of the best we've seen to date, and it can help the Cougars keep this game within 5 points, man. Hell, I'm not going to be shocked if Houston wins this one outright. Like I do think, like I said, I'm leaning Duke. I do think Duke wins this one. I'm not going to be shocked if Houston pulls this one out, man. They are extremely tough. They're extremely physical on the defensive end, and they beat you up for 40 minutes. They make you work for every single bucket. And the Cougars got some guys that they can throw at Flag, man. And if they can slow him down, they have a shot in this one, in my opinion. Like we said, Houston gives up nothing easy, right? And guys like Sion James, Knipple, look, they don't necessarily create offense for themselves. Houston is only giving up 58 points per game. That is first in the nation. They hold their opponents to just 38% shooting overall from the field. That's good for fourth. They are fourth in 2-point shooting percentage allowed. But as much is said about this defensive, especially the backcourt, man, Duke does have the better numbers defensively along the perimeter as Houston is sitting at 61st in terms of 3-point shooting percentage allowed. You got to shut down Flag, but you also have to shut down the perimeter. And I don't know that they can do both. I don't. I think that they can frustrate Flag, man, but if Duke can start knocking shots down from the outside, it's going to be hard for Houston to keep par with them. And we got to look at the fact, too, that these are two of the slowest teams in the nation, man. Duke is sitting at 268th in terms of adjusted tempo. Houston is all the way down at 360th. So this game is probably going to be a slow, grinded out physical affair that lives in the half court. Much of like what we saw last year in the Sweet 16. And while some people think that that style of play, I think a lot of people think that that would favor Houston and their playmakers. I personally think that that favors Duke with all that size, length, and athleticism that they bring to the table. You don't want to play a game in the half court with them, in my opinion. Not even Houston with that physical and tough defense, man. There's just too much firepower on that Duke side of the ball. So, all things considered, I am leaning Duke, like I said, but I'm not touching that spread, man. Not with Houston's defense in mind. Look, I feel like they can do enough to frustrate this young Duke team, right? They can keep things close. They're going to be tough. They're going to be physical. They're going to slow down this offense to some degree. And like I said, they could potentially win this game. They really could. But I'm more on the thinking that Duke just simply has a more balanced attack, more firepower, and at the end of the day, that will carry them through, right? They're going to make the proper adjustments to pull out a close victory. And I do think it's going to be a close victory, man. Like I said, I think that they will be frustrated by the physicality and the toughness from Houston, but I think they do just enough at the end to pull away and get this dub. So yeah, man, I'm thinking I'm taking Duke on the money line, and I think I would parlay that with an alternate look at the under. Because I like the under in this one, man. I like it anyways. Where I liked it at 136.5. We see that line moving down, and I think that's probably the direction that I'll be going with this one. So, as with all of these, man, make sure you check down there into the pinned comment. I'm going to put a link in there. It's going to direct you over to the Guy Boston Sports website. That's where all of my final plays will live. Any plays that I put in officially for this game, I'm going to have them over there so you can check that out. And you can see if you'd like to ride along with me. Maybe you want to do what the shirt says, man. Whatever you do, though, guys, throw that down in the comments, man. I want to know where everybody's brains are at on this one. Like I said, I think this is going to be the hardest game of the year to figure out sidewise. So let me know, man, who you rolling with, Houston or Duke? Like I said, I think I'm rolling with Duke on the money line and taking that parlay with the alternate total. Just give us some flexibility with those points there, man, and not have to worry about points on the side because I'm not trying to stress that right here with these two teams. It's going to be a close game, I think. So, guys, that is going to wrap it up. I hope you guys enjoyed the content. I hope you found it helpful and useful. And if you did, please do not forget to smash that like button down there and hit subscribe. Helps us out a ton, and all three of us over here at the channel greatly appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great Final Four. I hope you guys all cash out and make a bag, man. And I will see you back for the national championship.